All right, guys, to begin today, let's go to this. We're going to start off with Crowder and Candace. And then once we do this, we're going to go into the Christian nationalists. So hunker down, grab a drink, grab a snack, mount that like button for me. Let's read what's going on between Candace and Crowder. And I think this actually has some sound in it that I need to play. So let me just get this up in another window where we actually can play the sound so we can hear what's going on. Steven Crowder reveals divorce, accuses Candace Owens of extortion. Steven Crowder announced on his show, Louder with Crowder, that he is currently going through a divorce and has accused Candace Owens of extortion. He also hinted that he may pursue legal action against anyone who discusses his divorce in a manner that he deems inappropriate. And this clip was put on Twitter by Anomaly yesterday. Let's listen.
I have been living with a proverbial boot on my neck for going on years now. Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there is no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice. My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas, that is completely permitted. It's been the most heartbreaking experience of my life, what I consider to be my deepest personal failure. And just so you know, my opinions on parenting and families have not changed. I've always believed that children need a mom and a dad, that divorce is horrible. And I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter. In Texas, divorce is permitted when one party wants it, period. So for well over a year, in the best interest, as well as physical safety of my children, we've decided to keep this issue private and to resolve it privately with the appropriate attorneys, what have you, legal jargon. And all this, one thing I want to be really clear about is certain. True north here is that my children are blameless, completely without fault. And so we decided to resolve these issues privately, as it's in their best interests, both emotionally and physically, to do so. Now, the other issue is, and this is something that I've kept private for likely far too long, many other people knew about this behind the scenes. Some, not all, but some of them in positions of power, influence, leverage, knew of this. They also knew that the safety of my children included keeping it private. So if you're familiar with the idea of extortion, then you know the feeling well. Now, some of these threats were so thinly veiled that I'm frankly surprised you didn't all guess immediately.
Steven has a lot going on. I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their lives.
So what Steven is showing here is, you guys remember like a couple months ago when Steven Crowder started this feud with the Daily Wire, in which Steven Crowder, in the most based manner possible, secretly recorded conversations with the Daily Wire's CEO, Jeremy Boring, and then released those conversations after contract negotiations fell through and the Daily Wire started publicly lying about Steven Crowder. And Steven Crowder was like, ew, good thing I recorded our conversations, mother effers, and released those. And it set off this firestorm within the conservative community. And then Candace Owens that night went on Tim Pool and basically made a total ass out of herself. She was such a bitch. We watched the whole thing on the channel. It was like an amazing sight to see how much of a narcissistic see you next Tuesday that Candace Owens was in that moment when Steven Crowder started going after the Daily Wire. And so apparently Candace also commented on her show and said, you know, the reason that Steven Crowder is coming after us is not that we're shady in our business dealings and exploiting our talent openly. It's that, well, Steven Crowder, he just He just has a lot going on in his life. Nod, nod, wink, wink. He has a lot going on in his life. And, we really need to pray for him. We need to be the better person. We need to pray for him. And this was probably like days after Candace Owens went on Tim Pool and do you guys remember that? If anyone needed an exorcist between Candace Owens and Steven Crowder, I'm going to say it was Candace Owens that needed the exorcist and probably needed to be prayed for in that moment. But no, she's Steven is going through a lot and we just need to pray for him. Okay, Candace. All right.
I would like to implore my audience and everybody that isn't paying attention to the situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him. Sometimes people need a prayer. Sometimes people need a scripture. Stephen purports to be a Christian. I am unsure at this moment if it is my place to say more than that.
It's not your place to say, Candace.
If I feel
Candace, you're unsure. It's not your what Candace Owens was doing here was she was sending and I know this because I have sent messages to people via stream before. Sometimes I send thinly veiled messages where you guys don't know what I'm talking about. And sometimes I send overt messages where I just say what I want to say. What Candace Owens is doing here is she's sending Steven Crowder a message saying, Steven, I don't want to reveal the information that I have about you being in the middle of a divorce. Instead, Steven, I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to tell my audience to pray for you. But don't make me reveal the information that I have about you being in a divorce, Steven. Don't make me do it, Steven. That's what Candace Owens is doing here. I really want to make sure that everyone sees this.
In further defense, something should be said, or maybe if I feel that the public has a right
Thank
to
you, Red Sing the
understand certain
Blues. Good to see you.
circumstances.
Oh, my children have a right to privacy. Now, some other issues have been, or I should say, inferences have been more pernicious behind the scenes with demands and threats to use this information that they believe would be so publicly embarrassing to me and my wife.
I do know because I'm not a raging
idiot. It can be used, knowingly putting my children in harm's way. So to those self-styled Christians, conservatives, and allies, well, not in my book. Now, if you find yourself, I don't want to get into details. So
now what's going to happen is we're going to see some conservatives in my chat. Like they're going to start having some feelings and they're going to start saying, you don't know anything about Candace Owens. Candace Owens would never exploit the fact that she knows someone is going through a messy divorce for personal gain. She would never do that. Candace Owens would absolutely do that. Candace Owens is one of the most underhanded narcissists I've ever seen in my life. So if anyone feels the need to whine in my chat, just know that it's not going to turn out, it's not going to go well for you. And I'm sorry, but like, if you can't see that Candace Owens is like a raging bitch, I just don't know what to tell you. Maybe you have domination issues where like you like women to like beat the shit out of you. I don't know. But that's something to work out in your bedroom, man. That's not something to work out on the internet.
Going to likely be the only time I have to address this or want to address this. If you're asking yourself, hey, did X person or did Y person know? The answer is likely yes, which will be made alarmingly clear as this process of discovery continues. And it also, by the way, makes me that much more appreciative of those who did know about this and in understanding the best interests of my family, my children, kept their word and used discretion. I can't thank you enough. Sincerely, I appreciate it. Won't forget it. It's pretty simple. I
look at these good
loved
conservatives
a woman so much that I married
attacking someone over a divorce.
A woman
that's
who,
none of your
despite all of this,
business.
I still love as the mother of my children.
Good Christian conservative.
And she wanted
sure.
something else for her life. That's not my choice. She simply wanted out, and the law says that that's how it works. Now, of course, look, I get it. There are multiple sides to every story, but one thing that is undeniable in this case is that it's no one's fault but my own in that I picked wrong, and that's certainly not the fault of my children. And I will say that what's in the best interest of my children is not internet drama, speculation, certainly not blatant or veiled shakedowns or dragging their father or mother, and I can't be clear on that enough, or their mother through the mud. And to anyone who tries it, I'm no longer going to pacify, capitulate, or sidestep because I love them a whole lot more than I love you. And I will continue to do whatever is necessary to protect my children. Discussing the divorce any further on social media or on this show or in any public space is not what's best for them. I'll be handling this through the proper legal avenues and channels available as a matter of record in which I have more than full confidence. So I'd ask that you understand the need for and respect our privacy in what is obviously a pretty tough time. And I hope that none of this has to go any further than that.
The fact that Candace Owens brought up what was private information about Steven Crowder getting a divorce back in January because she was pissed off that Steven Crowder revealed the truth about the Daily Wire. If you claim to be a good Christian and you defend Candace Owens using a person's private divorce against him in a public space to try to pressure him into shutting his mouth, you are one of the best examples of a Christian hypocrite that I've ever seen in my life, and you are the type of Christian that gives every other type of Christian a bad name. But of course, Candace Owens, because she just can't help herself, responded on Twitter. Now, I'm very proud to be blocked by Candace Owens on Twitter. I don't know what exactly I did to get blocked, but I do know that I never actually responded to Candace Owens on anything. She proactively sought me out to block me, which I'm going to take as a feather in my cap. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but okay, fine. But luckily, screenshots exist. So Candace Owens responded to this from Crowder on Twitter, and she says, Steven Crowder accusing me of extortion is so patently insane that it honestly makes me question how there are still people who cannot see how thoroughly undone he has become. Candace, Steven was not the one acting insane there. That was you. This is not stable behavior. He is a man on a spiral. Outright bizarre and concerning. If you're going to use your children as human shields to block people from digging further into your divorce, please do so without inserting me into the narrative. And she said this after she was the one who publicly outed his divorce. Candace Owens was the one who started hint, hint, something's going on in Steven Crowder's life. Hint, hint. Oh, don't you want to look into it? Hint, hint. She was the one who brought his divorce up. Guys, I just don't... To be really crystal clear, if an internet commentator is getting a divorce, that is none of our effing business. It's not a Candace Owens business. And Candace Owens knows this. And yet she still used it. Hint, hint, Steven. Oh, we're all going to pray for you, Steven. We know you're going through so much in your personal life right now. And then she has the nerve to say, you're using your children as human shields to prevent us from digging into your divorce. Candace, why do you want to dig into Steven Crowder's divorce? Candace, if you really care about beating the left, the Democrats, the state, the government, who the real enemy is, then why are you spending any time at all digging in to Steven Crowder's divorce? It is none of your business. It is none of our business. The only people who are involved in Steven Crowder's divorce are Steven Crowder, his wife, and his children, and that is it. You are not involved. It is none of your concern. So why are you angry that, oh my God, Steven's trying to use his children to prevent us from asking questions about his divorce? How dare he? To remind people, the video Steven used in his show of me was a video of me responding to Steven's first set of bizarre attacks against the Daily Wire. Steven is not the victim. He was never the victim. I am the only victim here. Me, Candace Owens. I am the only victim in this scenario because I went on Tim Pool and made a complete ass of myself and showed what a raging cunt I really am. I am the real victim in this scenario, Steven, not you. Okay, I may have paraphrased a little bit there. I may have embellished a little bit. I may have, hypothesized what was going on inside of Candace's head when she wrote this tweet. Steven Crowder is just a bad person who continues to burn a lot of people. Well, those aren't all the feelings that Candace Owens had about this. And less than an hour before I started this stream, Candace did an additional segment about Steven Crowder on her show. And it's about 10 minutes long. And I want to watch the whole thing. I didn't get to see all of it. And so mount that like button if you would like to watch Candace Owens go on an unhinged rant. Where remember, Candace Owens is the real victim in all of this. Remember that. All right, guys, let's do it.
So first up, let's talk about Steven Crowder. A lot of you guys have probably seen his live stream this morning where he brings me up. So we're going to have to respond to that, obviously, because he makes some pretty heavy implications and insinuations in his video that are so patently false that it's shocking to me that a man with his following would be stupid enough to put this onto a platform. So let's first back this up in case you don't know who Steven Crowder is. It's totally plausible. He sort of lives on the internet. Steven Crowder is somebody who has a show called
Candace. Steven Crowder is more famous than you are, Candace. Steven Crowder has more fans than you do, Candace. Steven Crowder is worth more money than you are, Candace. I know that it's really hard for you to see this because you're a raging narcissist, Candace. And so it might be really, really difficult for you to understand that there are people on the internet and in the world who are more famous and wealthy and well-known than you are. But Steven Crowder is all of those things. And Candace, guess what? It's not even close. Steven Crowder is so much more famous than you that he can barely see you in his rearview mirror. And the only reason that he's wasting any time on you at all is because you brought up his divorce in a public setting.
Louder with Crowder, who had something very terrible happen to him at the end of last year. The Daily Wire came to him with a $50 million term sheet. He was offered $50 million. I know, it's horrible, terrible. He was so upset.
Which is less than half of what Steven Crowder is actually worth in the real world. Now, and it's just escaping Candace so much. Candace cannot fathom that Steven Crowder, here's the real issue here. Candace Owens cannot fathom a reality in which Steven Crowder is worth more than double of what she's worth. That's why it's $50 million. Oh my God. Well, when the guy is worth $100 million, maybe even more like $120, $130 million, and you're offering him $50 million over 5 fucking years or 3 years or whatever that deal was. Yes, Candace, it's not a good offer.
Upset by this, that he then decided to do a video in which he calls out essentially all of the Daily Wire hosts, myself included, for accepting slave-like contracts. These were the very heavy implications of that video, that his followers needed to stop Big Con, talking about how we are all existing and we're kowtowing. And of course, we responded forcefully to this because it's simply not true. The idea that I'm somehow in bed with big tech or that I'm dishonest in what I do simply because we didn't accept, I guess, his counter.
I like how Candace Owens is trying to position herself as being on the leadership team of the Daily Wire. Candace Owens is a contractor with the Daily Wire. Okay, she's one of their faces. She's one of their main content creators, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Candace Owens is not involved in the business operations of the Daily Wire. But she's trying, we did this and we did that and we did this other thing. No, Candace, no. Steven Crowder recorded a conversation with Jeremy Boring, who's the actual CEO of the Daily Wire and actually runs the business. You were not involved in this until you went on Tim Pool and made a complete and total ass out of yourself. And now you're saying, we, because she's trying to make herself seem more important than she actually is in the scenario, because Candace Owens is a raging narcissist and she always has to be the most important person in the scenario. And she has a dumb haircut. Yes, she does, Adam. I agree.
Her offer to the $50 million contract is pointedly ridiculous. Now, why are we talking about him again? Well, when in closing back in January, I essentially said that we were no longer going to talk about Steven Crowder, and I instead offered that people should pray for him because obviously when a man does something like that, he is broken. You don't do something like that to your friends unless there is something going on in your personal life.
And now Candace is like, I was being nice. And I just, Steven, I just really wanted my audience to pray for you. I wasn't doing anything underhanded or sneaky or obfuscating or deflecting. And I certainly wasn't trying to use your divorce against you in a public place. Steven, I was really worried about you. And I really just wanted people to pray for you. I mean, aren't you a good Christian, Steven? Don't you think that people should pray for other people? Does anyone buy this? I'm just Christian. Steven, I'm just a good Christian, and I just really wanted people to pray for you. Out of the goodness of my heart, Steven, does anyone actually buy this? I mean, look at her. I mean, come on. What a freeze frame.
Well, Steven Crowder announced this morning that he is going through a divorce, and I want to show you bits of that video. Take a listen.
But needed to take a moment here to address some issues out there that are circulating. It's never fun. But, well, I guess let me be clear here. I have been living with a proverbial boot on my neck for going on years now. Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there is no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice.
Okay, so in the open, you get it. Steven Crowder is a victim. Once again, he's always a martyr for his belief. He's always a victim. And this time, it's the proverbial boot on the neck. He's literally George Floyd. So the idea here is you need to feel really bad for Steven Crowder right away because he's got a boot on his neck.
Remember, guys, just but 2 minutes ago, Candace Owens was like, Steven, I just think you're a broken person. And the Christian thing to do is that we all need to pray for you. And then within 2 minutes, she's like, Steven Crowder thinks he's a victim of the world because he's getting a divorce. But you know who the real victim of the world is? Me. I'm the real victim of the world. That's who it is. It's me. And so the whole Christian, we're going to pray for you thing just went right out the window. It's almost as if Candace never really wanted people to pray for Steven Crowder in the first place. It's almost as if it was all a show.
Let's see what else he said.
So if you're familiar with the idea of extortion, then you know the feeling well. Now, some of these threats were so thinly veiled that I'm frankly surprised you didn't all guess immediately.
Steven has a lot going on. I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their lives. I would like to implore my audience and everybody that isn't paying attention to the situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him. Sometimes people need a prayer. Sometimes people need a scripture. You know, Steven purports to be a Christian. I am unsure at this moment if it is my place to say more than that. You know, maybe if I feel in further defense, some things should be said, or maybe if I feel the public has a right.
I mean, the Daily Wire and Prager condone anything that's convenient for them to condone. Now, of course, Prager University doesn't actually believe in freedom of religion. They don't believe that people should be able to have their own spiritual beliefs. They don't like it when people say things like everyone goes to heaven and there is no hell. They'll cancel people for that. But Candace Owens going after Steven Crowder and him getting a divorce and using that information to extort him, Prager's fine with that, bro. Daily Wire's fine with that. That's totally fine because Candace Owens, who is an unhinged raging narcissist, she's their token black conservative that they use for everything. And so she can, get away with whatever she wants. But, the rest of us that are just trying to live our lives, we live by different standards than Candace, just so you know.
Right, to understand certain circumstances.
Well, my children have a right to privacy. Now, some other issues have been, or I should say, inferences have been more pernicious behind the scenes with demands and threats to use this information that they believe would be so publicly embarrassing to me and my wife at a difficult time that it could be used, knowingly putting my children in harm's way. So to those self-styled Christians, conservatives, and allies, well, not in my book. Now, if you find yourself, I don't want to get into details, so this is going to likely be the only time I have to address this or want to address this. If you're asking yourself, hey, did X person or did Y person know? The answer is likely yes.
So much that I want to say here. First and foremost, if you're a person that watches his show, how do you not see that he is so obviously acting and that he is a very bad actor? Do you feel bad for him when he says that?
That's the ironclad law of woke projection in action, Candace. Can't remember, again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but less than 3 minutes ago, Candace Owens was like, I just really wanted everyone to pray for Stephen. Candace Owens pulled out her best Oscar-worthy performance. She was like, I just really want everyone to pray for Stephen. He's having a really hard time in his life. And now Candace is like, do you believe Stephen? Can you not see that he's acting? Ironclad law of woke projection, Candace.
When he says, if you're familiar with the idea of extortion, well, if you are familiar with the idea of extortion, you should realize that video that he just showed of me wasn't that. Nobody threatened him. Nobody made demands behind closed doors. His insinuation that I knew about his divorce before he decided to attack the Daily Wire is a pointed lie. Let me tell you what actually went.
Hang on. Candace is about to admit that she knew about Steven Crowder's divorce. I really want everyone, because this is the portion that I happened to see when it was premiering live on YouTube. She is about to admit that she knew about Steven Crowder's divorce. And literally right before that, she's like, I didn't know about his divorce. How could I possibly know about his divorce? He thinks I knew about his divorce. I didn't know anything about his divorce. She's literally about to admit that she knew about his divorce. Watch what happens now.
Went on behind the scenes. Steven Crowder on election night was our friend. He was on the backstage with all of us, laughing, having a great time. He even sent me a retrospectively very flirty message thereafter on Instagram about how nice I looked on election night, even though I didn't respond to it. Thereafter, obviously, he attacked the Daily Wire. He decided to record his friend, Jeremy Boring, and to release the recording out of context to make it seem like Jeremy Boring knows that he's employing all of us like we're slaves, right? This is what Steven Crowder did.
Jeremy
we had
Boring
a right to respond forcefully to all of his claims. We all did that on our different platforms. And then I said to myself, just sitting there one day, why is he doing this? It's a very simple question and an obvious question that any person would ask. This is not normal behavior. It's very erratic to go from being friends with somebody, being with them on election night, laughing, having a great time, to suddenly wanting to ruin their entire company.
So Candace I was so, here's what's about to happen. Candace is like, I was so concerned for Steven Crowder and why he might be acting so erratically that I very innocently started digging into his family relationships to find out what was going on. She's literally about to say that, but we're going to take this super chat from Shayna first. Thank you for the super chat. It's worth noticing that when Candace started with the Daily Wire, her show had a guest panel and a studio audience, which could have been a great concept. Now it's always her alone in the studio. I wonder why that is. Could it be that Candace Owens recorded private phone calls with one of her first guests on her show, Nicole Arbor, and then threatened to release those phone calls publicly on the recording of the first show? And if you don't believe me, go back and watch the videos I did about Nicole Arbor on this channel, to include an interview with Nicole Arbor about what happened when Candace Owens recorded Nicole Arbor's private phone calls and then tried to blackmail Nicole live on the first taping of her studio audience show to release the phone calls. That's the kind of person we're talking about with Candace Owens here. But now let's come back to present. And we are going to listen to how Candace Owens was just so worried about Steven Crowder and his mental health that she went digging into what was going on with him and his wife.
And launching Stop Big Con. It's bizarre behavior. I turned to my husband and I said, where's his wife in all of this? Isn't she supposedly a Christian? I'm just thinking about the way that I talk about everything in my life with my husband. Every night I'm talking to him about what's going on at work. I thought to myself, where is Hillary Crowder in all of this? How did she not tell him not to do something this vicious and this disgusting? And then I said to my husband, I bet they're not even together. I logged on to Instagram and I found Hillary Crowder's Instagram account and I looked to see, and it turned out that she didn't follow Steven Crowder and that Steven Crowder didn't follow her. He didn't follow anybody in her family and she wasn't following anybody in his family. That was my aha moment. Clearly, there was some sort of a separation.
Now, so, Candace, what you're saying is that you went digging for dirt on Steven Crowder after you got pissed off that he came after Jeremy Boring with those recorded phone calls, and then you went on Tim Pool's show and made a giant ass out of yourself. So then you got so pissed off that you started going and stalking Steven Crowder and his wife's Instagram, looking for evidence that you could then use against Steven Crowder. Candace, you understand that's like unhinged behavior, right? When someone like has a problem with someone, their first inclination is not to go, maybe I should go check out their Instagram to see if there are problems between him and his wife that I can exploit for my own gain. That is unhinged, Candace, and it's also proof that you knew something was going on because you proactively went and dug for dirt into something that was none of your business.
Now, this might sound like crazy CIA stuff, woman stuff. It's exactly what happened. I then spoke to Jeremy at the Daily Wire and I said, do you think that him and his wife are potentially separated? And he said, no. Obviously, it's his friend. He would have known whether or not they were separated, except he didn't. He actually had no idea if they were separated either. Finally, we decided in conclusion, Jeremy advised that we just stay out of it, that this is actually not our business.
That's good
but at
advice.
least it actually felt good to learn.
That's good advice. See, Jeremy Boring, for his many faults, he does actually, he gets things right every now and again. He actually gets a lot of things right. He's actually a really smart guy. I just disagree with him on a lot of stuff. But Jeremy Boring, to say to Candace Owens, Candace, we are not going to use Steven Crowder's private life against him because that's beyond the pale. And by the way, you probably shouldn't have been digging into his private life and his relationship with his wife in the first place. So we have to give credit where credit is due. Jeremy Boring did the right thing and said, no, Candace, we're not going to use Steven Crowder's divorce against him. No, we're not going to go that far.
That he was going through something privately because it assigned some reason for something that he did that was so horrific and so irrational to his friends. And finally, we said, okay, this is a broken man. This is what I was thinking. This is a broken man who is on some sort of a spiral. It is likely his divorce that led to this moment. He's acting erratic. He's acting panicked. And this at least gives us some sort of an excuse for why he behaved this way. That's it. That's the big, scary story. I then went onto my platform and I said, pray for Steven Crowder, honestly, because that's what he needs. He needs a prayer. And apparently...
So you just admitted, which you denied less than 5 minutes before this, Candace, you just admitted that when you asked people to pray for Steven Crowder, it's because you had dug into his private life and you knew something was going on in his marriage and you were trying to send him a little signal saying, Steven, I know what's going on, Steven, but I would never release that publicly. I'm just going to ask my audience to pray for you because you're clearly in trouble, Steven. Please. You literally admitted that Steven Crowder is absolutely right when he says that you tried to use his own divorce against him. You raging bitch.
Nobody's answering those prayers right now because he's still acting erratic. He's now upping the ante and suggesting that I extorted him. I will not take that lightly, okay? I am not Hillary Crowder. I am not anybody in his family. I am not going to take somebody going onto his platform and alleging that I either harassed, threatened, or did anything that would put his children at risk. That is very serious stuff that he is saying. And so what I did this morning after this clip was sent to me is I contacted a defamation lawyer, and I am sending Steven Crowder a cease and desist. And I'm going to demand a full-throated retraction to the idea that Candace Owens threatened him or extorted him. And not that I simply did a little math. 1 + 1 = 2. A crazy man doing these sorts of things to his friends obviously means that something is going on personally. Honestly, this time, I'm not even going to suggest that anybody should pray for him. I am so deeply troubled by the idea that he is trying to insert me into this narrative pertaining to his divorce. I'm frankly angry about this. So I'm going to hope that he does the right thing, okay? That he does another one of his live feeds on the exact same platform and via the exact same medium and offers me an apology and takes back every single word that he says.
I don't think that's going to happen,
And,
Candace.
by the way, if you think that that's bad, here's how he decided to end this clip pertaining to his divorce.
It's pretty simple. I loved a woman so much that I married her. A woman who, despite all of this, I still love as the mother of my children. And she wanted something else for her life. That's not my choice. She simply wanted out, and the law says that that's how it works. Now, of course, look, I get it. There are multiple sides to every story, but one thing that is undeniable in this case is that it's no one's fault but my own, in that I picked wrong.
I picked wrong. Wow. How kind, how loving. You really must have loved this woman, Steven Crowder. Again, I don't know who's buying.
And now is where it's going to get even better. What now? Candace Owens is about to drag Steven Crowder's wife, who is a private person, into a public internet feud. Watch what she does now.
Your act anymore. I certainly haven't bought it from the very beginning. It's very obvious to me exactly what you are. You come across to me as a very dishonest individual. It seems to me, Steven, that you really, for whatever reason, want to insert me into this narrative. Like there is just something about me that you are hyper-focused on. And so I want to help you a bit. And really, I want to help your wife because you essentially just used your platform. Millions of people have access to your platform. She doesn't have the same, to insult her. You picked the wrong woman, okay? So here's what I would like to do. I would like to invite Hillary Crowder onto my platform because she doesn't have one and because her ex-husband apparently just used his to insult her, to say that he picked the wrong woman. I find that to be really despicable. So Hillary Crowder, if you are watching, you are more than welcome to come on my show and to talk about what's actually going on.
So Candace just wanted the best for Steven. And Candace would never do anything like invite his ex-wife onto her show to continue to gossip about Steven Crowder because she's pissed off that Steven Crowder publicly called her out for digging into his business. Don't tell me you're a good Christian if you are dragging other people's private spouses, whether or not it's the divorce is finalized or not, wife, ex-wife, I don't really care. That is one of the lowest possible levels that you could have stooped to, Candace, but you got there. You went under that limbo bar, girl, and I have no doubt that you can go lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And she really thinks that she is the righteous one in all of this.
Because, as I said, I don't trust a single word that comes out of Steven's mouth. All right, speaking of Hillary Crowder and mothers everywhere, Mother's Day is around the corner.
And then she segued right into a promo for Mother's Day. You cannot make this up. So guys, that is the latest episode of the whole Steven Crowder Daily Wire Candace Owens feud, in which I really didn't think Candace could sink lower than she already sunk. Man, I really thought that performance on Tim Pool was one for the books. It really was. But now Candace Owens has quite literally inserted herself into Steven Crowder's divorce to try to use it against him. can someone please email HG Tutor and ask him to evaluate Candace Owens? Please. I know, if you know who HG Tutor is, you know, all right? Please email him and ask. I know knows who Candace Owens is because he's talked about her before. Can someone please email HG Tutor and very nicely ask him to evaluate Candace Owens? Please. That's all I got for this one.